All right.
All right, let's call our meeting to order. Our roll call, do you want to do the roll call, Tim?
Sure.
You've got it?
I do.
All right, minutes from our last meeting, which was way back on June 15th. So,
Well, why don't you have them go through roll call just for purposes of the video so people know who's
ahead.
here.
Chris Zellner.
here,
Tricia Brown.
Here.
Al Nassau.
Here.
Gary Hirschberg. Dave Kennedy. Kristen Runge.
Here.
And Joe Toombs.
all right. Is that going to pick up? Are we loud enough?
It should be. It
Okay.
usually has pretty good.
Just want to make sure. Okay. Approve our minutes for June 15th, 2021. As I said, it's been a little while, but
Make a motion to approve.
motion by Kristen,
And I'll second.
second by Al.
Abstain.
And Tricia can't because she wasn't here.
So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Can we do that with 3 votes?
That's a majority of
What's here?
a quorum.
Present.
Okay, perfect. All right, then we have, under new business, reports. Report from Tim Stemmen. Yes, Tim, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So this is my first CDA meeting as a staff person. For those of you who haven't officially met me yet, I've been here now 3 months today. So I'm the village's new community development director, although not totally new, but relatively new. So in the span of the first couple months here, I had the opportunity to meet with several of the CDA members. And in those meetings, I guess I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some of the themes that kind of presented themselves. And there were a few that really jumped out. So number one was a clear sense of purpose is desired among members, along with parameters regarding their authority. Another comment, there is a desire to have good and current data. And then to what extent should the CDA be involved in TIF agreements? And actually we're going to be talking a little bit related to that later this evening. Should we explore more workforce housing and a desire to be open to funding sources that allow for more workforce housing? And then there was also expressed a concern about long-term interest in property and property maintenance. And then one of my observations is that the current makeup of this board is extremely well qualified for the role set forth here. So it's really nice to learn of all of your backgrounds in finance, community development, senior housing business, and general business acumen. So I think this committee is going to be very well populated for discussions and recommendations moving forward. So with that, that's really the gist of my report. Chair Zellner?
All right, I skipped public comment since there was nobody here to make a comment, so I should point that out for the camera. But I will comment and welcome Tricia to our committee as well. And maybe we can give a little background of ourselves for you as well, so you know. Tim, thank you for that introduction, saying that we're qualified. That's good to know that you feel that. I can appreciate that. With that, so I'll go first and just say, so my name is Chris Zellner. I'm a lifelong resident of Wanakee, and currently the village president, and I'm also in the banking world. So I'm the market president at One Community Bank here in Wanakee.
Me next.
Sure.
Kristen Runge. I work in community development with the Division of Extension at UW-Madison. I've lived in Wanakee since 2009. Neenah, Wisconsin before that, Atlanta before that, but I grew up in Sauk City, Prairie, Sac. So I am not quite a lifelong resident of Wanakee, but I feel like I'm getting close. So.
I'm Al Basso. I'm a retired, semi-retired tax guy and litigation expert. Did a fair amount of real estate in the tax world and consulting, so I know a fair amount about real estate. My wife is a long-term resident of the village of Wanakee. They founded the Wanakee Tribune, her great-grandfather. That's how long they've been here. But I joined about 2002, 1992 is when I moved here. So that's
Close
it.
enough, right?
Yeah. But I'm retired for the most part. Still do some gigs on the side.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
I think one thing I can share for Kristen and Al's information, and Tricia, you might not even be certain as well, but the vacancy that Tricia filled was caused by the removal of Jeff Smith. Jeff was really unable due to work commitments to get to many of our meetings. I think we maybe saw him a couple times since the CDA was reinvigorated. He had communicated with us the challenge that he had with forced overtime at work and understood if the decision needed to be made to have him removed from the CDA. So the board both did that last night and then approved Tricia's appointment last night.
So Tricia, you may want to say a little bit about yourself as well, because they didn't get all the information.
100%. So currently, I am with JP Cullen, a general contractor that I kind of grew up in the southern Wisconsin area. But before that, I've had over 20 years in economic development. So I started off cutting my teeth in River Falls, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then spent about 10 years in Southern California, and then came back and was at the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and most recently in that role as the Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Secretary, and then came over to JP Cullen in kind of a similar role, even though it's construction, kind of doing a little bit of both economic development and working with our industrial clients. So this to me is a great opportunity. I completely appreciate Tim and Todd reaching out, because I'm on the other side of the table now from where I used to be, and working in my community. And so quite an honor, to be honest.
And I would say that it was probably a couple years ago when your schedule got lighter post WEDC we had lunch or something.
Yeah.
You said, Todd, you
Yeah.
know, if something pops up, if there's an opportunity, my life can allow it now.
Yep.
And I did not.
I don't have that conflict of interest anymore.
Right. I did not forget, and I'm glad you're with us.
Thank you.
Perfect. So thanks everybody for sharing, and welcome.
Thanks.
All right, under new business, review of statutory rules and duties of the Community Development Authority.
Ooh, exciting.
This sounds absolutely awesome. Great.
I'll make it fairly brief. So I actually had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and due to the logistics here this evening, we had to go old school, and so before you is this paper reproduction of that, so you can follow along there with that. So
And for those who might be watching the video, we will have this linked in the comment section of the message section of the YouTube.
all right, so the first item, just really wanted to reintroduce the members, for those of you who have been on the board or the CDA, as well as new, as well, including myself, to kind of where things started and where we are now. So in 2011, the CDA for the village was created, and that outlined the duties of the body. In general, it was created for the purpose of carrying out blight elimination, slum clearance, urban renewal programs and projects, and housing projects. And I just put some of the statutory references there on the slide that were included in the approving resolution. And so per that resolution, the CDA really only has powers as specifically conferred by the village board on a case-by-case basis. So really, they're an advisory board or an advisory body to the village board.
I could give you a little bit of extra interesting history that you might not even
Go for it.
know yet, but the village had a CDA, and it was disbanded in probably 2009, maybe, because it simply wasn't doing anything. It was recreated in 2011 for the purpose of assisting with some conduit financing for conduit financing for the ice rink project. So they serve kind of in this intermediary role to assist with a local bank to fund financing for elements of that project. So it was created for that sole purpose, and it was essentially unused since then until just a year and a half or so ago when it was reinitiated. So there you go.
Good, excellent.
And I was on all three CDAs.
You were. So you have
You had started, finished, started, and finished, and started.
all right. And then in 2019, what was called the Wanakee Economic Development Corporation, or Commission rather, was repealed in favor of the CDA reviewing the Housing Task Force summary report and then making recommendations to the village board.
And I think you were on that too, Al.
Yes, I was.
And then, starting last year, the CD actually initiated their work on affordable housing, and the recommendation, had created recommendations to go to the village board for approval, and I believe those are still pending. Actually, formal action has yet to take place by the village board, but that is forthcoming. So that leads us to now, and so that's essentially the summation of the duties of the CDA.
Perfect. Any questions, everybody? Al, you look like you're pondering.
He does have a pondering look.
I'm just thinking of, were we stripped officially of our powers back in 2009 when we had the authority to issue, or I'm not sure issue is the correct term, on the bonding that we assisted in getting for the ice rink? We were given a lot, in my opinion, a lot more authority at that point in time. Did something change that changed the authority of this group?
The CDA ordinance language is the same as it was when it was created in 2011.
What about before that?
I'm not sure what that was before my time. I haven't. We could dig that up and find out if the CDA had more specific duties.
Or does the 2011 then trump everything previous to that?
Well, that is certainly the case because that is the ordinance on the books today.
Okay. That's what I was pondering.
It's amazing that I could tell you were pondering with a mask on.
Yeah, I saw.
And I can't talk with this thing on.
It's easier to talk this week with the Packer one on.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Oh, we might have a Viking fan here.
How did you know that? Did you tell
Is
him
that true? No.
Did you tell him that?
I don't even know if I knew that.
You must have Googled me.
This is a weird sensation going on. I could tell you were pondering. You could tell she was a Minnesota fan. I'm just freaked out right now a little
Did
bit.
you know that?
This is a great committee right off the bat. I like this. All
We
right.
should start guessing lottery numbers. So-
All right, so then we've reviewed that. Let's go on number 2, discussion on role of CDA for creation of TID number 10.
Okay, and if it's okay with you, Chair Zellner, I'm going to move the agenda items around a bit and make item 4 after 2 because they're really
It's fine.
related. That's
That
okay.
works perfect.
All right, so next on the presentation, just an update. So at the September 7th meeting, the village board conveyed the duties of the plan commission for the creation of TID number 10 to the CDA. So this body will be the body that serves that function in the approval process. And on the slide, what I did was I just put a sample timeline of what that approval process looks like. And really, it's only for 2 takeaways, as noted on the bottom, which is the CDA is the body that will hold the public hearing associated with the TID creation, and that the overall process takes about 2 months. It just so happens that, and I'll switch to the next page, just earlier this afternoon, our consultant gave us a more refined timeline. So one of the first questions or orders of business is, in this timeline, the next meeting at which any action would be taken would be November 16th. So that is the 3rd Tuesday of November, and just to put the question, are you all available that evening?
I am, yes.
Thanks.
Oh, you didn't even look at you just.
School schedules, so, yeah. So,
And
we're
we
not
don't
gonna go
necessarily
until
need
Wednesday.
an answer right now, but will need one soon so that we can set this up.
Certainty on quorum.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good.
It's at night.
Yep, 6 p.m.
Well, you're retired.
I
I have a lot of stuff on my calendar. I can be here. I may have to cut something else short, but I can be here.
I would note that maybe depending on sort of what we hear in the community and what we might gauge for an expected level of participation in the public hearing, I may suggest, I know this, maybe Christy would disagree, but to safely and effectively do a larger meeting now, if we're still in these COVID requirements, I might suggest that a Zoom webinar would even be more effective than
In person.
a modified challenging in-person meeting, but perhaps we can cross that bridge as we get closer.
It is post-mask time period, whatever that means.
Currently, yeah.
It's the Tuesday before Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, correct?
Correct, yes.
Would we be receiving any criticism of having it Thanksgiving week if people are like, they meant to have it Thanksgiving week, so attendance would be lower, or any of these things can sometimes.
Is that during an actual break period of this, for this?
I think-
for the-
No.
I think it's the week before.
Thanksgiving is actually
That's
the
a week
next
before?
week.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's the week
okay,
before.
cool,
Yeah.
cool.
Yep,
No.
but it is the Tuesday before deer hunting, if that matters to
It
you.
is
No.
deer hunting on my calendar.
Yeah. Is it deer hunting on the, or is
My
it
calendar.
active deer hunting on the, yeah, so. That make people, people might criticize Wisconsin. So I just want to make sure that we're not, but I thought it was Thanksgiving week, so.
No.
We could also consider a modified version of a maybe a way that we can incorporate both Zoom into some in-person elements. Again, we'll work to gauge what the public sentiment, what we're hearing, as we try to coordinate the best approach to getting the feedback.
Are you assuming it'd be controversial?
Well, I'll welcome Tricia. I'll share with I'll share with you two things. One, this is the first time that the CDA has been the body involved in reviewing a TID process instead of the Plan Commission. Statutes allow for it, and the village board approved this approach for TID 10. Second, TID has been a polarizing subject in the village for, majority of my time here that I can recall, and so yes, any TIF,
Right.
whether it's a creation of a TID, an amendment of a TID, or even passage of a development agreement that involves assistance from TID increment, is generating more discussion and controversy and than it has before.
Sorry.
No,
Don't need to be
that's-
sorry.
And but that Tuesday is your regularly scheduled Tuesday, right?
That's for the CDA.
Yeah.
I believe that's the regular.
Correct.
Yep.
I'm just checking.
It is, yes.
Okay.
So are we going to have a conflict with court generally on this night? That we can't-
Kylie said she was looking into it. She doesn't think so, but for some reason that there was a miscommunication on this evening. I don't know if this is the normal court night or not. I personally don't know that.
So we need to figure that part out too, because we shouldn't be down here, in my opinion. We should be either at the library or
Yeah.
Village Center, one of the two. We should have a good meeting area for people to be viewing easier than what we have down here. Plus, it's a little dingy down here.
Yeah, this was sort of a court had been going all virtual, and I think that was perhaps expected, which would have made that room available, but the court went in person this time.
So we don't know if we're going to go to Zoom, but if we don't go to Zoom and we stay in person, we should have it at one of those locations, if at all possible.
Correct.
To have more space for people to come into. The library is probably preferred. Okay? Move on, Tim.
All right.
So I got a question though. When it says discussion and role of CDA in TID 10, I see there's more to come on TID 10, whatever that means. But what does it mean, given that September 17th has come and gone, and already the first draft has been circulated? September 24th, class 1 notice, that's
Yep.
beyond our scope. September 30th, and that's,
Yep.
so what's our role?
Sure,
given
so,
the
so,
timing
thi-
we have here?
yeah, so this was, as I mentioned, was really just a sample to show of what the process would look like from a timeline standpoint.
Mhm.
You're right, all those dates have passed. If you look on the chart on the next date, those should be more reflective of what will happen. And there's another date on there, where another one of the arrows is pointed out at October 22nd. That's the planned date at which the project plan will become available. We're still working with our consultant Ellers to put the actual plan together, and that's going to take a little bit of time. So that's the date at which that plan actually would become available for review. So this on the second page, the next slide, really represents a better likely timeline for that approval process. Yeah, sorry, but we just got that this afternoon, so.
Yeah, and I'm not faulting that. I'm just trying to understand what her role is. It sounds to me
Oh,
like
yep.
the TID's already been defined based on your next page.
So your charge will be to make a recommendation on the project plan and the TID boundary. So it's not totally defined until you and the JRB and the village board sign off on it.
Okay.
The village board authorized the process of coordinating the district creation. That sent staff to work with our consultants to assemble a draft project plan. So that's what circulation means, is that we're in the process of circulating that through the staff process to gather all the information that Ellers needs. We use Ellers as our financial consultants. Todd Taves, maybe you've met Todd. So we're doing that internally, and then the project plan is sent to the members of the JRB. So essentially, the CDA isn't in an active role at this moment, and don't become active until that meeting in.
Actually, go to the next. Go to the next.
Sorry.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, at that meeting where the CDA has the responsibility of coordinating the hearing and making a decision on a recommendation to the village board.
Is that the November 16th or the October 22nd?
So the first meeting of the CDA will, under this timeline, would be November 16th. Prior to that, the Joint Review Board will meet sometime within the window of November 2nd to the 16th to just do an initial review of the project plan, appoint a chairperson, public member, and then set the next meeting date. And so there are statutory timelines in which, between the public hearing and so forth. So that's really what the purpose of this timeline is. But the next meeting date for this is likely to be, for this body, would be November 16th.
Let me add that this doesn't mean that you can't start chewing on this on your own before
exactly.
November 16th. As soon as we have the project plan availability, I think it'd be certainly reasonable to get that plan into your hands. It's going to be publicly available document and posted meetings with JRB.
And that's why, again, if you look upward in that timeline where the first purple arrow that defines October 22nd as that likely date that it will first be available. So we hope to get that to you as soon as we can when it is.
So November 16th. So we get the stuff, we review it. November 16th, we have a public meeting. Mm-hmm. And we're the targets at that point in time of the public and their feedback. At what point do we decide yay or nay or modify or whatever the decision is?
The hope is that evening.
That evening?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, if the CDA is unable to, and Ellers will lead you in that process in evaluating the feedback. You're playing, the CDA is playing the exact same role that the Plan Commission has played in the past. That's where the Plan Commission fit. One thing I will share, and I think maybe this leads to what you're thinking, Al, is that the reason the village board agreed to take this approach, and Tim and I recommended the approach with the CDA, is because the Plan Commission specializes in zoning and land use. Mm-hmm. The project plan is much more designed as a financial instrument and a financial mechanism. The talents here in this room and the other members of our CDA are bring skills and abilities to reviewing the likes of a project plan that are going to be really useful. So, this is new for us, Chris, in that we have this different set of eyes, and I think we can do a good job of leading all of you through this and getting information as soon as we can. With that said, if November 16th comes and the CDA feels that more deliberation is necessary, Tim. To schedule a special meeting, I don't think we're running up against a deadline, except that we are scheduling out the next JRB steps, right? So my question is there room after the 16th for the CDA to schedule a special?
Spread that out. I think the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
So that's on the tail end of that schedule, you'll see a lot of the TBDs, to be determined. And some of that has to do with action taken or recommendation taken by this body or Plan Commission. But if there's a desire to hold this over for further evaluation, or that would cascade that timeline out farther.
And I only ask the question because historically, this group has been very thoughtful in their discussions and not quick to decide. And that's the caveat that I don't know what's going to happen, having not gone through this process before. But the history of this group is we're very, obviously, I don't want to say slow and methodical, but we do have a process we can put ourselves through.
Deliberative?
Very much so. And we take it very seriously, and I think that's to our credit. I just want to say, you know what, November 16th, we got to decide that night, and that's it. And I don't know the answer as to what's going to happen. It might be it's okay, I don't know. But, you know, it's a different set of eyes. No one's experienced this. We may say, you know what, guys, we don't like it at all. And I don't think so, but don't know.
Sometimes we have a TIF scenario that is laid out because there's a very definitive timing element for the potential specific end user. So sometimes we even back into it. We're not facing that scenario. Certainly there's interested end users with MLG in the business park and the Stott's property, etc. But I don't sense that there's a specific deadline urging that we've gotten from them.
We appreciate that.
So I appreciate what you just said, and I've been through at least several of these, we'll just say it that way. If we look at our plan here that Tim's presented, October 22nd is when we're going to first see all the information at the village from Ellers. And what my question is right now is, we're not listed on there that the CDA is going to get that information. It's saying it's provided to the village overlapping tax entities. Does the village include us?
Yes.
That we get, so all the members will get the information?
Yeah, so this is when...
Okay, I just wanted to, so that's good then. So we're going to get the information so we can review it individually on the 22nd. So I would recommend that everybody be prepared once you have that information to go through it before we get to that November 16th meeting. It gives you a good month to chew on it. When the joint review board meets, it's really just figuring out dates, more or less, with the JRB. And everybody, do you know what the JRB is when I say that?
Joint review board?
Yeah, joint review board. Al, you know what that is? Okay. Yes? Okay,
Yes.
so their role. So really, it's just, here we're going to map out these dates, and then it's going to come to the CDA, and we're going to go through everything with Ellers at that public hearing, hear the information, and it's our time to ask them questions, but it's also time for the public to give their input. So to your question, we may not be ready, we might not be ready, and that's okay for us to not be ready, but my assumption is we will, because the information they provide is very clear, concise, and it doesn't take a lot of...
Right, I see that.
So you know what I'm saying with that. So I think the 16th we'd probably be ready, but as you noticed, there are a couple, for sure, that may not be ready, because this is going to be their first exposure, especially because they weren't here tonight to hear this. So that's something we'll have to take into account.
Yeah, and I can certainly understand that. It's just that if you're asking for public input, on November 16th is their first kick at the can. And we're sitting here, and we're trying to digest amongst ourselves what's in the public. It's a lot of information. And certainly, I'm sure we're all going to be prepared, but we also like to at least listen to what others have to say.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that we have that option to listen to, the ability to digest and perhaps modify our conclusions or initial conclusions.
Sure. Absolutely. There's not going to be any pressure to us at that time.
Okay.
Right, so in the timeline, I think there is one statutory window which will easily be met. So it says, village board would review the project plan and adopts resolution approving the district project plan and boundary at least 14 days after the hearing. So if it's 30 days after the hearing, you're okay. Meaning, if you push it out, there's, it's okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if we need to push it out too far. I'm just
Yep.
asking for the
Yep.
possibility of having more time, sometime.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we may call a special meeting. Maybe it's, instead of waiting a month, we might go 2 weeks or
And that'd be okay.
whatever it is. Yeah, so we'll have that discussion as well, correct? That's okay for us to do.
It is.
Yep.
One note I would have, between November 2nd and the 16th, you see a note there that the Joint Review Board meets. I think, Chris, you mentioned that's sort of the introduction meeting. The board really, there's no action taken regarding the project plan. But you may want to attend or watch that video, because we're also planning at that meeting to have Ellers come and present our annual report on all of our existing open TIF districts. It might be worth members of the CDA having some background knowledge on the village practices and the current TIF, the on-the-ground meat and potatoes elements of our current TIF district scenarios as good background information as we look at a new one.
Okay, good.
So the next slide, to give a little bit more context to TID 10, there's a map on the next slide that approximates the boundary. This is the preliminary boundary for TID 10 as shown. It is in part an overlay to the village's existing TID 3, which is scheduled to close within next year, is it?
Yeah, within a year or two.
Yeah.
22.
So that's part of the reason why this request is being made. But very recently, the lands at the corner of Hogan and State Highway 19 and 113, otherwise known as the Stotts property locally, was recently annexed. And so there is, I guess, a desire at this point to bring those lands into the TID, to make those lands eligible for projects and infrastructure and so forth. So this is the context of where this is, of where the TID will be.
And just, this shaded portion that I showed there, that's currently within TID 3.
Okay.
So partial overlay, partial newly.
Is some of that developed already, or am I just like,
Just the Carlos Dodson Implement Dealership, which is all the way to the
I mean,
right
that
side
one,
there.
yeah, okay.
That is, the rest of it is not developed.
Okay.
Well,
Is the
except
in the
for
yellow?
except for the Murphy building, we were proposing, now remember, this is
You're right.
proposed, it's easier in a TIF process to include more land at the start and remove land as we move through a process than stopping mid-process and adding additional parcels. So as staff, we always sit back at every TID creation process and ask the question, where around the immediate area that we're looking at might also be useful to include? So we ask that question. In the case of the I call it the Murphy building.
Hub is.
There is only a quarter of that parcel is developed. They've been attempting sale, well, since the day it was built, right? To no avail at this point. So the notion of including it might be to either capture value to support other purposes within the district, or perhaps figure out how we can help successful development of that property. The impetus, I will share, is the undeveloped portion that MLG owns. MLG, the industrial park developer, right along 113. Essentially, it's this, it's that shaded part.
But that's already in a TIF. That's already in TIF 3. So we can re-TIF the project, the property?
Yep, you establish a new base value for the new district.
Okay. And what's driving this? What's driving this to all be TIFed or re-TIFed at this point in time? What's motivating this?
Part of it,
process?
I would say the main catalyst is infrastructure, the cost associated with the infrastructure that is yet to be put in. So because TIF 3 is closing, that expenditure period is closed, we won't have the opportunity without TIF
Okay.
to get those funds. So it's like we need, I'll use the word a do-over, that's not really it, but
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
We're past the time frame to pull any other
Yep,
rates from.
yep, I got it. Okay.
And if there was a summary of what that infrastructure is, it's connecting Frank H. Street to Hogan.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah. And then stuff that has to happen around that to make that happen, land prep, stormwater management, the utilities, the subsurface
Yeah.
work, and then the road itself.
But there's nothing in the plans right now, there's not a development in the plans right now on any of this property.
No confirmed user.
You qualified your answer.
Yeah, but, well, both, so we've annexed in the Stotts property, the village board approved that just
Right.
a month or so ago. And their intent is to see development on the parcels adjacent to 113. Same with MLG. Both parties, Stotts' and MLG, have talked to us about potential users, those they have kicking the tires. In fact, I don't think MLG would have been urging us as they had if they didn't have serious potential users. So they're not at liberty to tell us who these users are. Sometimes they'll give us general ideas, but that's why I qualified it, Al.
Okay. At one point in time, there was discussion about having single-family and multifamily along Hogan Road. That goes back perhaps 5 years ago, if I remember 5 years ago. Is that not the case? Once this goes into a TIF or a TID, is that not, will this be used for that purpose?
So with the proposed type of TID, a mixed-use TID, up to 35% of the area of the TID could be used for residential use. Now, whether it will be or not, unknown. But under that flavor of TID, it could be a permissible use. So generally, it's commercial and industrial in a mixed-use district with the allowance for residential. But I think really the intent on the west side of Hogan is primarily for non-residential uses.
Your zoning would regulate
That's
it,
what I was
though.
going to say.
I'm sorry?
Your zoning would regulate it.
The comp plan would have to be amended to allow for it.
Right, the comp plan calls for primarily industrial up in this area, industrial and commercial uses.
And neither MLG or Stotts are suggesting to us residential uses.
Correct.
Other than one point out, the way the road is going to be coming through here, the potential for us to expand our industrial park, which we kind of referred to earlier, commercial park, across Hogan Road, fits really well. It could also potentially be that we flip across Highway 113 to the other side where Intercon is, and into that area. There's all different things we're going to be discussing, but this particular TID is kind of getting us prepared for that.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I like to see the bigger picture so I understand where this whole thing is going. And just for the record, I'm not opposed to having, and I'm not sure what family housing is, under the context of what, I keep trying to figure out what's affordable versus what's workforce. But I'd be more agreeable if it were workforce housing as opposed to generically affordable housing in that context. But if you're looking for a multifamily market rate apartments, I struggle with that one. Just to be clear.
Well, I think the intention really is to keep the uses and currently there's covenants associated with TID 3 and residential is not a permitted use in this area. I don't believe it's allowed by zoning either. So I think the intent is really to carry that, continue that on into the future. So that's part of the discussion, obviously, as things move forward with this. But just because the statutes allow that for inclusion doesn't mean it has to be allowed. So
One thing you might be remembering back to 5 years ago, Al, that's when we finished our latest comp plan update.
Right.
And at that time, we identified lands east of Hogan Road, between Hogan and 113 as some mixed use, that's this darker here, mixed use. They're transitioning into single family as it abuts additional single-family cells. So you might, when you reference adjacent to Hogan Road, that certainly is identified in our comp plan. It's not in the village yet, but that's there. And then the expansion of industrial park type use extends up in this area. And we can talk more about that when we, if you care, as we dive into it to give you better context. But that 5 years ago is when we were talking about that.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to understand the macro part of the vision as to where we're headed with this.
And actually, if I may, that's a great segue into item number 4, which is expansion of the business park and what's the role of the CDA relative to that. So I don't know, Todd, if you want to keep going.
No, I'm sorry, maybe I jumped the gun. I'll let you take it.
No, I was going to say that, I mean, but what Todd is talking about is just that. So part of the discussion for this evening was going to be just introduction of what could or should or might be the role of the CDA relative to the future expansion of the business park. And I think just to kick things off, I think from a land use perspective, it's probably going to be the Plan Commission that takes the lion's share of that planning, but we could anticipate, at least internally, this body having a function similar to what they're embarking on now with future TIDs as that business park expands. So I don't know if you want to
Well, just
build on
not
that.
unusual with the Greenfield Business Park development. That is almost the universal design to fund the infrastructure would be through TIF district creation.
So this one, there's really, I guess, not a whole lot. I didn't really prepare anything because this is really at the leading edge of what that's going to look like, the future expansion. So what I can tell you though is that we've actually had some conversations with the property owners out in that area just to kind of kick the tires on desire for or probability for land sales and openness to that, and those discussions will continue. So.
And those discussions have been prodded by the fact that what you see on this map as a lot of vacant space is not very vacant anymore. And once this 40, however many, maybe it's not even 40, once that's filled, we're without product. And frankly, we look at a lot of potential developments now that are seeking a flat square piece of land, 20 acres in size, and we have to tell them we don't have it. So we already send away potential projects that we might jump in the ring on.
Yeah, maybe you could share quick just what's all filled in here. I mean, so everybody's clear on where we're at with regards to what Occupy's done.
Well, this certainly is going to be. Do you have something on?
No, I was gonna flip back. It's not a good.
It's not a good. Not
visual
gonna help
for-
those watching, but
I don't know, it's not as pretty.
and maybe it's not built on, but it would be spoken for. So here's the new D-car under construction. This is robotic automation up in this corner under construction. They're currently in St. John Properties. The brewery on steroids, also known as Octopi, is filling up this. They're planning to break ground on their warehouse, 200,000 square foot warehouse expansion. Isaac told me last week that he thought ground would break this week, and I did see some tree removals going on now. This land right here is sold to a business in Middleton that's looking for planning a future location. Octopi has bought this or have an option on this, actually on the rest of this. The Octopi is looking to be planning for their what's next. This is built on, this is the Trending Now location. The RNG Heating here has purchased the adjacent property for their expansion. Settle Strauss owns this, and that kind of fills it out except for what's up here.
Yeah, so the point is that's why we're having to go down this road. Because not only you hear about Octopi expanding, there's other community businesses that are expanding, or want to expand, or plan to expand, and if we don't have a spot for them, they may be expanding out of Wanakee for all their operations, which we don't want to have happen either. So, yeah, thank you for pointing all those out. That's spur of the moment, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of it, it's exciting too.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's like we've really seen the district come back, and the activity the past couple of years have been quite amazing, with a lot of homegrown business energy.
Which, as you talk about St. John's and moving from there into their own unique facility now, which makes that St. John's kind of like the incubator that we talked about many years ago. Even a facility for someone to grow, to get to a certain point, and then do their own thing. It sounds like a perfect entourage of how to start a business and grow it.
It does do that. I just wish they had space. They're 100% full.
Yep.
And maybe in fact a good user as we put out more infrastructure to continue with that model.
Perfect. Any other questions about that? Are we clear with kind of how we're going to go down that road? Okay. Perfect. All right, so that gives us 1, 2, and 4 done. We're at 3.
Yes.
Discussion of possible matrix and criteria to be used for distribution of affordable housing funds from TIF extension.
So this item is really the start. And I have a high degree of confidence we're not going to get everything done on this, and we're not really planning on that. This is really going to be the beginning of the conversation of policy recommendations that will go eventually before the board. So if you turn the page, next slide. The village recently took advantage of the ability to extend one of its TIF districts for the purpose of creating an affordable housing fund, and that is TID number 2. And so the estimated, so what happens with that is communities are allowed to extend the life of a TID for 1 year with the purpose of using that, capturing that increment for use for affordable housing and housing-related projects. So in the case of Wanakee, they extended TID 2, and they allocated, what do we have here? About $326,000 of $510,000 to Cohen Esri, the developer, for the Village on Main project, which is just being in construction right now. That's a 50-unit affordable housing project. So that's the first creation of the extension of the TID and the first use of those funds. So really the purpose of this point in the agenda is just to get you to start thinking about what are those policies that make sense, because these requests will likely come back. And so continually going through the exercise on a case-by-case, every-time basis, what I did was I included some information from a couple other communities just as a starting point, Milwaukee and Janesville. And then in the article by I think it was Kurt Lipinski from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, provided some examples from other communities, again, Milwaukee, Madison, Fitchburg, Monona, La Crosse, and Appleton, how they've used the funds, but not just how they've used it. They, in using it, they've created policies for the use of those funds. So really, it's in your court now to start talking about this and what these things look like in terms of prioritizing potential criteria under which if a multifamily or affordable housing developer comes before the village, you would say, why does this qualify or not qualify? When the initial resolution for TID 2 was created, the language really spoke to the state statute, and there wasn't a lot that I could find of specific criteria of why the village should or shouldn't award those dollars. So really, that's the purpose of this, and like I said, it's meant to be an ongoing discussion, I imagine over several meetings, and with the hoped for outcome that then this policy list, if you will, would go to the village board for their approval, so that then there would be some criteria that at points in time when TIDs would or could be extended for similar use, those funds would populate the basket of dollars, so to speak, and then they could be awarded. So one thing I didn't include in here, we actually had a conversation with our finance department, and as part of the lead up to the annual reporting on the final, the annual status of all the TIDs, were the closure periods. And I think from my perspective in learning about that, there are several TIDs that I would say within the next 5 years have the potential to be used to create a pool of money to add to that fund. And if that's the case, it would seem to be a good idea, I think, to be ready with a set of policies for how to use that money. So with that, I guess I would turn it over to you all and just say, hopefully you've read and looked at some of these and just say, where would you like to start? It's kind of a blank slate right now. We can talk about priorities or get into the weeds with specific policies. Up to you at this point. And for those of you who have perhaps been down this road a little bit and have some experience in this policy creation, I would certainly welcome your feedback most definitely.
So one thing I would ask, and I guess I'm kind of thinking I know the answer, but I don't know if I know for sure, is that I know like the community development block grant funds that are referenced in some of these articles that some of the cities use, they're not offered to Wanakee because we're just not big enough. So we're part of the bigger pool, correct?
I believe we're called, that's for non-entitlement?
Correct, yeah, we're not entitlement. So we have to compete for those funds from the state. And so we have to make an argument as to why Wanakee should get some of those things for some of our affordable housing projects, where cities like Appleton or La Crosse would just be given these because they meet the threshold of population or what the requirements that are met. So I think there's, as a region, what things are being done that we're part of, that we should understand, that we either need to get in front of or that we need to be aware of that are out there. So if we're not an entitlement city, what is the, I don't know if is it an RPC, I don't know, Regional Planning Commission, like I don't know how those, and the CDBG funds are like allocated that way, if it's just like competitive by city, by grant or whatever. But what else is being done, and if there's a supplement that's being done because of some of the federal funds that have come to the state. But just to understand, like, where do we sit or where do we fit into that formula? And we don't have to know the answer.
Yeah,
it's just a question.
Yeah.
I'm looking to Tim and thinking that may need to be researched.
Yeah,
That's-
I don't know the answer to that question at all, but I think that because there's just this influx, that there's some regional things going on, that I don't even know if the regions know what's happening right now.
What my experience with whenever I've looked at the opportunity to solicit some of the funds from our region, there is extremely strong pull to census tracts that are identified as being more eligible than others. Various points and criteria lead to that, and we don't have a lot of property that falls into that category.
So I think it's just important to differentiate, like when you see like they get this money, we get this money, like Wanakee doesn't, we don't get that pot of funds. So there's kind of that, we have to do it on our own and create that, right? Okay.
That's what I'd speculate.
Yep.
One thing that you might want to do, Tricia, others have seen it, but we've had a couple presentations over prior CDA meetings. They're all online. One was from Mike Kerrigan, who I bet you know, regarding workforce housing endowment program, of the different programs that the CDA had been exploring over the past 5 or 6 months. My take from talking and sharing together with CDA members was that was of interest. So I don't know if you've watched that yet, Tim. I can forward you the PowerPoint from Mike Kerrigan, but they're currently pursuing that concept in Fitchburg, and it has some merit. And I think the CDA thought it did.
I did like that program quite a lot. I'm very interested in how Fitchburg is going to accomplish the goals of the program, how they're going to do it. That'll be worth watching.
Just on the Cohen Ezra, is the 326,600 Is it a grant or is it a loan to be paid back? Or neither? What is the context of 326,600? Will that money ever come back into affordable housing?
There is a portion that we have in the development agreement provisions that would be repaid. It coincides with timing of refunding that typically a LIHTC project undertakes at X, however, 13, 15
15
years in the future. That repayment, though, when it comes back to the CDA, or comes back to the village, can be utilized and incorporated into any funding purpose. It's without encumbrance. Certainly would make sense, and I think it would make good sense to reinvigorate a program that we're working on for affordable housing. So that will be a possibility. The exact amount, I don't know if it was 50, do you remember, Chris, 50% or?
That's what it was kicking in my head, but I'm not positive, so.
Yeah, I might be able to track it down.
Yeah,
while we're
first of all, you're
talking.
15 years out.
Right.
In 15 years, I don't need to know the details. In 15 years, I won't be around. But there'll be other programs around, there'll be other things going on. There's a lot of things that are going to happen between now and then. So just the fact that it's 15 years out, that's great to know, but it's not going to do much for us today.
Right.
So the balance is 183, and I was trying to find the, I thought Ellers or someone put together a list of the TIDs when they came due and how much was the potential. Because the ultimate question I have is 183,668, how fancy do we want to get for $183,000? I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was presented to us, a lot of different programs, whether through Oshkosh or through Ellers, but there was a lot of different programs we saw. They're all great programs.
Was that Boston was another, or there was another?
Lacrosse had one as well. So.
You know, whether it's assisting with the down payment on a home, or kind of lease to buy options, which is what Eller proposed. But there are a lot of different things. I just don't know, 183,000 on the surface, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not really a lot of money.
No, I think just from my knowledge, it's almost $2 million we're going to get in the next 5 years. That's going to come into that.
If the village board agrees to extend the TIDs.
Correct. Which they seem to be very open to that idea for this. Whether it be for first-time homebuyers to seniors needing assistance to their homes for windows, whatever it might be. That's what we're going to be deciding in this policy is how we can use those funds for different things.
Yeah.
What that maximum amount could be, make sure the fund sustains itself.
I understand that. The question I have, though, is, and we all did like that one program that was put before us. We thought it was a great program. But there are other programs that would be just as helpful to some folks who would like to buy a home or rent to buy or whatever it is, whatever context we want to offer it to. Whether it's the Viridian, years of down payment, you're there for 5 years, we forgive the loan, whatever it is, but some kind of program. And it's not that we need to look at other communities necessarily. It's a great foundation, springboard to work off of, but we can do what we want for the most part from what I can read. It's pretty generic as to what we can use the money for, as long as we don't, not discriminatory and all those things we got to comply with, which is fine, we can do that. But I don't know what it is we're trying to accomplish yet. And I do like, as I mentioned before, workforce housing. I think that's great with the business park going full tilt and expanding. I think that's a good thing. But I think we also have to fall back to the housing study and kind of figure out what it said and how to overlap with that. So I think there's a lot on the drawing board. I just don't know for 184,000 where we want to start and where do we want to end it. Maybe we put together a complete policy. Here's what it is. And with expectations, there'll be funding at some point down the road.
So maybe that is a recommendation is to build a little bit, I think, where you're going is we don't really have a lot of money to disperse at this point. Maybe you have a recommendation that there's a minimum base upon which to draw from versus, well, let's see how quickly we can use it up and just, okay, we're done, we're out. Or we say we want to maintain X from which these programs can be the dollars can be distributed toward. Just a thought, but what does the statute say? 75% of those funds have to be used for affordable housing. The balance have to be used for housing-related costs. So it doesn't necessarily mean, like you were mentioning, I think Viridian or things like that, down payment assistance and so forth. So that may fall within the rubric of that, as long as the majority are for affordable housing.
So I just got a clarifying question to that. I guess you led me to where I wasn't expecting to be led, and that is the 25%. If we have a grant, for lack of a better term, for someone who qualifies, whatever the income criteria is, for a grant to make a down payment on a house, that grant comes out of the 25 or the 75%?
I think it depends on the recipient
Okay.
or the project.
Okay.
Is it for affordable housing as defined in statute, or is it just for some other housing, some other way to address housing costs, which may or may not be considered affordable?
What I read, just for purposes of affordable housing, what I read, it's 30% of the household income. So if I make $1 million, 300,000, my household expenses cannot exceed $300,000, just to take it to an extreme. It's a function of that household, not of Dane County or not of Wanakee. It's a function of that household.
Yeah, that's what is affordable for your household.
It's under this extension of TID money.
I think with the TID money, we're also looking at what HUD designates as affordable for area median income. I don't know that we would be allowed by the state to finance high-end homes for people with high incomes that want to spend more than 30%. I think we still have to hit those HUD targets for area median income. So when they're talking affordable housing, they're really looking at those HUD limits. In my understanding, and I'm not the finance expert on this, but and I just came from a real estate MBA class where we were talking about this. So there's what is affordable for any individual household, and then there's a proportion of homes within a community that are considered affordable for people making area median income. In Dane County, so they do that on a county by county basis for the most part. So in Dane County, our area median income right now is at $103,000. So they're looking at people that make between about $80,000 and $100,000 as qualifying for what we consider missing middle income. And then below that, they're really HUD is looking at financing at 60 to 80. So it's just so math is so easy, like in this census period. So 60 to 80,000. So what that looks like then in Wanakee is if you are, and don't quote me on any of this, don't rewind and those people that are watching, because I'm doing this off memory after a 12-hour day. But if you're looking at renting a subsidized LIHTC home, they're looking at two things. Where are you within those different HUD brackets, the 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, or the below 20? And then is the rent for your unit going to exceed 30% of your income? So that's when we're talking about the rent. So those are kind of the intersection of the two things that we're looking at. We're not really looking at, Joe Smith makes $300,000 a year. So if he wants to spend $110,000, on a year on a house, then that's not affordable for him, or that would be like a completely different thing.
Right, you're not talking relative affordability. I believe you're correct. It's based on
limits. Yeah.
Based on, when you mention that number, is that for some household, and what's household size? Is that 4%?
Household of that's area median, and I'm drawing off of a 2019 report that I did for Mount Coro. It's almost identical to the one we did. It was 103 for overall area median income for all households.
All households, regardless of size?
Yeah, regardless of size. When we're looking at family households, I think it goes up to which family of 4, 2 income earners, I think it's somewhere around 123, 124. I am literally working off of memory though, and I can forward you what my last report.
Right, but the point is that there
yeah.
are those thresholds.
Yeah, the variables, yeah. And I do have the Dane County stuff sitting on my computer somewhere.
And not that I understood what you said, I heard what you said. However, I thought the gentleman from Oshkosh gave a comparable example to mine. Very simple example. Under this extension money, the 100% that goes into this fund, 184,000, can be used for anybody as long as the housing cost doesn't exceed 30% of the household's income. You threw in LIHTC, which I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about any subsidized program, but for this particular program. I thought he'd mentioned that there were no income requirements, or Mike Galler might have mentioned that because there was a fairness issue, which on the perception, it does appear to have a fairness issue. If someone's making $1 million, and they want $300,000, and I thought the response was, that's the way the game is played. That's my words, not his.
I don't recall what he said specifically. I know I was focused on, he was talking about like the example of a teacher and a police officer, and so those were the income.
I could be wrong, but I
Yeah.
guess
Let me share this from the league's article here. The city must use at least 75% of the increment to benefit affordable housing. And there's a definition. Any remaining portion of the increments must be used by the municipality to improve its housing stock.
right. I'm talking about the 75%.
So right now with our funds, the 510, we've almost used 75% of the funds already towards affordable of what we currently have. With the 326, it's about 380 is the total.
I guess I had not gone there. I appreciate that. You're right. 75% of the 510 probably gets you looking at 327. Yeah, close.
Yep, a little above it. It's about 50,000 more, but we'd have about 130 available into the 25% right now.
So that gives us the latitude to do whatever we want within statutes, with the
Yep.
balance of the money.
Yeah.
If we
Right
can
now.
justify it improving housing stock.
Right.
So that, I guess, is a lead-in again to probably a question that won't be answered here, but you could say, well, as a community, we want to use 100% of this fund for that, area of median income qualified, for example, as a matter of policy. Because statute allows it, sure, but maybe as a matter of saying, well, because we as a community think that the cost of housing and access to that is important, we want to use all of these funds for that, under that affordable condition, not just, well, we've reached our 75, now we got this pool, and if someone asks us, under the affordable guys, if you follow me, we would say, no, someone else already asked and we've allocated that for project X or Y. Again, just as a matter of policy, that could be an example of a direction that you recommend going.
And I would have to agree with you that 25%, if you're going to start offering that to non-affordable housing, you're opening Pandora's box at that point in time. I think the intent, the sales project, or the reason why the TID was extended was for affordable housing. And just because 25% could be used for something that's not affordable, just doesn't sound right to me.
I would agree with that. And then we get into some of the bigger TIFs closing, 25% of a $2 million TIF is it's a really significant amount of money. I think it would be interesting to do a ranking exercise at some point in time of what do we see as our individual priorities for how do we accomplish affordable housing. And one of the things that was really attractive to me some time ago, we talked about, I don't want to use the term land banking, but about doing a land set aside or a land purchase where we would be able to put out, and this was, I don't even think that this is an official discussion, where we would be able to put out an RFP if we decided to pursue another LIHTC project in the future, where we would have some control then over what does it look like, how many units, where is it located. I'm happy with the Cohen Esri project, but I know not everybody in the community likes maybe the look of it. And you have to have some money in the game in order to have that kind of control.
So maybe really related, so for example, Janesville, they focus on sites that are near their downtown in terms of prioritizing.
Yeah.
So for example, maybe there's geographies in the village that you'd say, we want to see these areas redeveloped or whatever, or monies poured into that as a matter of policy.
Yeah. And likewise, I think, and Al, you've referenced this before, maybe not directly, but the idea of homeownership being affordable and not just affording to rent in the community too, making that inaccessible, finding an on-ramp for that for people, I think might also be a priority. Now, what does that look like when we're talking about the Tiff and TID extensions? What does that look like in terms of programs? Where does that rank relative to other priorities that we might see? I think it would be really interesting to do that at some point in time. And then maybe use that to set our policy or get some public feedback on, or board feedback, or plan commission feedback, or
Just going back for a point of clarification on my earlier comment, and you had included, Tim, I believe was whoever put the packet together from the Department of Revenue, some facts and questions. What is affordable housing? State law defines affordable housing as housing that costs a household no more than 30% of the household's gross monthly income. Getting back to my illustration, it's of that household, not of Dane County, not of the state of Wisconsin, not of the village of Waunakee, it's of that household. 719. That's what led me to that conclusion, as well as the conversation.
yeah, above that, they consider a cost burden. We'd question though, if you make $1 million a year and you spend $300, are you really cost burden?
Right. And I believe the guy from Oshkosh, the gentleman from Oshkosh mentioned they turned some of those folks down for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah.
So maybe that goes back to defining policy of just because if you make $1 million or $2 million or whatever, and that 30% is your cost burden. Are you really? That would be a policy direction of maybe you put caps on what that looks like.
So I think we're going to have a lot of these things as far as what we want to come up with what's going to be appropriate for us. And that's what we get to come up with. This should be a very interesting exercise to say, all right, are we going to do this for senior 60 and above, that they're eligible for replacements based on their income level at the time? If they have, if Social Security is enough for them, if that's all they have, maybe that's not the case. We can put all these rules and regs in. Todd just handed me the TIDs that are closing, so it looks like about $3.4 million.
Computer generated.
Handwriting.
What I would focus,
So 3.4 million between now and 2027. So roughly 6 years, that's how much money is potentially, if the village board.
Sorry, how much again?
3.4. So you go through 2027, this one. That's how much money could be placed into this.
Doesn't have like factor in county, like in some cases, county LMI. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's different criteria and metrics that you can factor it on, not your $1 million.
My other question too is, you look at the county gives money to Schumacher Farm and various other places. Is there a way for us to get some money from the county for Waunakee? By the way, Schumacher Farm's not Waunakee, it's in Westport. So I just feel like there's very little that we could back from the county. And I'm not trying to pick on the county, I just feel that way from a housing perspective here in Waunakee. We don't see that at all. And I don't know if they have any programs or any things that we could tap into that work with what we're trying to accomplish. But county, state, federal, where can we potentially access funds?
I would support that because part of the idea of making Waunakee an accessible community to everybody, we don't have all of those tools ourselves. We really actually do need help from the county in making sure that other county residents, should they choose to live and work here, or live here and work elsewhere, that we're able to offer that to people. I think, I do feel the county has an obligation, for sure.
Well, and the county's there's been a lot of dialogue from county leaders about all communities across the county being part of the affordable housing solution. So, I mean, Tim and I have shared emails back and forth with a program here, a program there. And I think the county's willing to put their money where their mouth is on that to some extent, and we'll stay in tune to the opportunities there.
Yeah, I just think we want to look at that. But the county's also been making some changes with how they're doing their road funding too. You know, we're going to help and replace this road, but you're going to take over maintenance from here forward if we're going to give any money. So that puts it back on us ultimately. Yeah, we get the road redone, but now we have the future of that road to take care of. So there's just some things I think we need to iron out with the county and talk to maybe some of our representatives and see if there's something we can do with regards to our housing.
So I like Kristen's idea of ranking priorities. I wonder if that would be a better way to help guide the discussion if for the next time or prior to the next time, we give you a suite of areas, priority areas, potential priority areas for you to undertake that exercise. And then you can start maybe sifting out things, those priority areas in which policies could be developed. I mean, we'll certainly answer, I'm jotting these things down, giving the answers to some of the questions you brought up. But would you think that would be something of value that would help the discussion?
I think that would be great to have it, that it's sent out to all the committee members. Rank your things, add your things, what's important to you, put those in a order, and then we just have a discussion about it. I think that's a great way to look at this.
I agree 100%, and I'd like to add one,
Yeah.
just to make sure it's not missed. We've talked many times about seniors not being able to afford their house. Predominantly, it's because of real estate taxes going through the sky high. It's becoming a bigger part of the budget. And I don't know if we can do this directly, but freeze the property taxes once they hit age X. So their home the taxes become frozen at that point. Other states have that, they freeze it. If we can't freeze it, and I know we only have control over the village budget part of that, I assume, then can we take money from here and supplement the real estate taxes so they can stay in their home?
I don't know the answer to that, but interesting question.
So if they automatically, I'm 51, I would say, is it income qualified? If it's not, then I'm going to start shifting all of my retirement account into real estate in Wanakee so that my taxes can be frozen.
Well, it's got to be principal residence.
I think in Illinois it's age, so I don't know.
I've got a cousin who just bought a home or got a home through family in California under that rules.
I do know that the state has really put the clamps on much, frankly, any creativity that can be done with the consistency of taxation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Then could it come out of this fund? But to answer Christian's question, because this just came up in my discussion with the developer I talked about previously. And there's a group going around the country talking about between age 62 and full retirement age of Social Security, you can control your income via deferring it into IRAs, 401ks, or Roth IRAs, where you have no income between 62 and full retirement age. Even though you could have $10 million in a retirement plan, with no income, you're now eligible for all government programs. There's a group going around the country talking about how to do this.
Those darn accountants.
So that
it's good to have them on our side.
So when you say, is it income qualified?
Yeah.
In my case, I have no income.
I know, exactly. Yeah, so I would say, like, if the idea is to, because I'm just imagining sitting on the village board again and
Is
people outside
this a foreshadowing?
This is a foreshadowing, because I'm not on the village board, but no, and I will not, no. I like this here, but I'm imagining if I was sitting there. No, you can see me, hear me laugh. But, if the idea then is to reduce the cost of housing, what else can we do that would be comparable to that chunk of money that would be taxes? Because taxes are reducing one person's taxes and not another. Because then what is the argument, how do we say to like a single parent who is in the same financial situation. I'm sorry, this person has had the ability to retire and reducing their taxes. You know, you're working 3 jobs and trying to remain in the community, but because you're not retired, or you're not 62, you're not 65, I find that would be a really difficult argument to defend. What could we do instead if people are having financial hardship regardless of age or stage of life that would reduce the housing burden for them to stay in a home that
That's
they
where your
own?
fund comes in right now.
Yeah.
That's what you do with creativity on that.
Yeah,
See, but
so,
you just expanded my concept.
So
I
that's-
did,
but
because
that's
I
what's
don't think that
exactly what-
retired people are the only people that deserve help.
This is exactly what we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
So what you're bringing up, that's why we want to put those things in there, so we can have this discussion
Mm-hmm.
and go around and see what our best options are and what should be at the top of the priority list. So I agree with you completely that that's something we can look at, if we can look at it.
Well, I mean, in my mind, we can by using the fund, but it sounds to me like we can't just say, you know, they're frozen, period. Because that gets into county, gets into the state, gets into the tech schools, gets into village, but so it'd have to be through one kind of subsidized program.
So one of the coolest things about this committee, Tricia, is that we established boundaries at the beginning, which means we end at 7:30 every time.
We did it.
7:33, 7 more minutes.
So that's why I'm pointing out, we're in our last several minutes here of the discussion, and if there's important things on your mind right now, let's get those in quick.
One other question I would have for some future meeting, maybe come 2022 in the new year, if we could have somebody from WIDA with an H come in and talk. I know they've changed the way that they're scoring LIHTC applications, and that it's supposed to be somewhat easier for rural areas. We have parcels of land adjacent to us or close to us that USDA considers rural. If we know in advance what it means to be competitive on those applications and how that's changed, that might be just really useful for us. And also, I think that if we could get in front of WIDA and talk about the challenges we have as a community remaining affordable or offering affordable housing, that's always a good thing.
Okay. So noted.
Perfect.
So we tentatively have a meeting next month. Do you want to meet next month and start diving right into some of this stuff?
Yes, I think it's important we bring our other members into the mix right away.
Okay.
So this is all fresh to us, it's not going to be fresh to them, but we can have the discussion and make sure we're starting to move with this.
Well, with that said, we will get the recording, encourage our absent members today to consume that so we can jump right in next time.
Agreed.
So that meeting date would be October 19th.
Correct.
Okay. Great. Good start, I think.
Absolutely. So we need a singular motion.
I'll make the motion. First meeting, I'll move to close. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Perfect.
Fine.
Good discussion tonight.
Thanks, everyone.
Your first motion.